Hi, this is Nancy Yearout, and welcome to my show, High Road to Humanity. In every episode, I tell you powerful true stories filled with great wisdom that you can use in your own life as you strive for a higher road to travel. My featured guests will have their own unique stories to tell that enlighten your mind and your soul. So kick back, relax, and learn the secret to success when you take the high road.
First touch, strong connection, it lays deep in your soul.
Hi, this is Nancy Yearout, and welcome to High Road to Humanity. And I'm here today with William Peters, and he's got a new book out, you guys. It came out Tuesday. It's called At Heaven's Door. If you're watching me on YouTube, I'm holding it up right now. Let me give you just a real quick synopsis of what we're going to be talking about today. So in 2000, Peters was volunteering at the Zen Hospice Project in San Francisco when he had an extraordinary experience as he was reading aloud to a patient. He suddenly felt himself floating in midair, completely out of his body. The patient, who was also aloft, looked at him and smiled. The next moment, Peters felt himself return to his body, but the patient never regained consciousness and died. So long whispered about in the hospice and medical communities, these extraordinary moments of final passage are openly discussed and explained in At Heaven's Door. This book is filled with powerful tales of spouses on departing this earth after decades together and bereaved parents who shared their children's entry into the afterlife. Hey, welcome, William, to High Road to Humanity.
Thank you, Nancy. Pleasure to be here.
I'm just really excited that you're here today. So thanks for coming. I mean, I'm real big into the heaven thing. So I'm real connected up there. Anyway, so it's going to be a fun show. But before we get talking, I just want to talk about a couple things I want to bring to people's attention. This is High Road to Humanity. So two things that really blew my mind this morning that I want to talk about. Here's the headline. Parents and caregivers of young children say they've hit pandemic rock bottom. This is a quote. I had a parent tell me to F off last week. Corey Berg said she directs the Hope Day School, a church-affiliated early childhood program in Dallas. The unhappy mother took her two children out of Berg Center after each of their classrooms were closed for quarantine, saying she'd hired a nanny. Wanting to return, she emailed, called, and finally showed up in the middle of the day. Just as Berg had warned her, spots were taken. The mother, according to Berg, threw a fit before coming back and apologizing. She was like a toddler. She was jumping up and down. This is what's going on in our schools because people have to go to work and they don't know what to do. Now, on the flip side, he's probably going, oh my God. Listen to this headline. COVID. Face mask rules and COVID passes to end in England. I don't know if you guys have heard about this because I don't know why they're not talking about it so much, but England's Plan B measures are to end from next Thursday with mandatory face coverings in public places. So the Prime Minister also said the government would immediately drop its advice for people to work from home. The PM said England was reverted to Plan A due to boosters and how people had followed Plan B measures. He told MPs, scientists believe that Omicron wave had peaked nationally. So they're going back to normal. I think that's really cool. Do you have anything to say about this, William?
You know, the whole COVID pandemic has really pushed us as a human species to the modern human species, as we like to call ourselves, to the limits of science in a certain sense. It's so much uncertainty and speculation. But I guess my response to it is just compassion for, everybody involved. There's a lot of disagreements about how to deal with it. But I think the real important thing is just like, people are doing the best they can. This for us is kind of a first. I mean, we haven't had a virus that is this wily and adaptable. And so I just say to my people, and I'm a psychotherapist, so I work with a lot of people who are,
over the top,
over the top, stressed out. What I hear all the time is, I've seen behavior in myself I didn't think I was capable
Oh
of.
my God. Yeah, and I was just going to say, as you were talking about this, it's how we react to the situation. And I'm really glad you're here today, because there is more to life than what we're doing right here. I believe we're here to learn. I'm sure you do too. But you've had a couple near-death experiences. Talk to us about what happened to you. Tell the audience what happened and how you got into, this whole situation where you wanted to find out about other people's near-death experiences.
So yeah, I was living a normal life, kind of a suburban boy outside Silicon Valley. And at 17 years old, I went up skiing with a friend over the weekend and had a really bad skiing accident, crushed my spine. And then I was catapulted out of my body at the moment of impact. Things went dark for a bit, but I was always there. I was observing the darkness. And then next thing I know, I see my body on the ski slope. I'm moving away very rapidly. Look at the continental North America, enamored, at peace. Then the satellite view of Earth. Everything's all fine. It's just like, okay, now this is happening. I would have a life review right then as well, up to my previous 17 years, which taught me pretty quickly that everything I'd ever done in my life was recorded somewhere. I was watching it all played back to me, and kind of the importance of my activities and behaviors was being revealed to me as well. I kind of thought, well, that didn't matter, but actually a lot of it did. So kind of a teaching on karma, actually. And then I go into this rib tunnel and I'm looking through at the beautiful galaxy. Once again, just really enamored and at peace, and knowing that I've kind of been here before. I mean, not kind of, I knew that
It felt familiar.
Yeah, this wasn't foreign to me.
Okay.
But then I see the light and I realized, oh, I'm dying. And that was not okay with me, because I said, I had this immediately uprising within me. I am not ready to die. I have to do something. I came to this incarnation to do something, and I want to go back. So I went into the light, and it was beautiful. For a while, I was in that light, and I said, well, maybe I don't need to go back. It's so awesome here. And, I called that light God, and then I started pleading with this. Okay, I'm not ready for this. I have to go back and finish what I came there for. And I'm also thinking, boy, the first 17 years were pretty tough. And now I've gone through that. I don't want to go through that again. I want to get to my life's work, which I had no idea what it was.
Right.
But I wanted to go back. So I came back, and but as I was getting pushed back,
it
was like a pushback. It was a pushback from this light. I heard this telepathically communicated to me from God: make something of your life.
Yeah, I wrote that down.
I didn't know what that meant, but I came back and didn't talk about this experience at all.
You told nobody?
No, well, no, I didn't know. I didn't tell anybody about it.
Oh my God.
I just, once I was back in my life, there just seemed to be no place for it. I mean, I just didn't even think about it that I can remember. I did think about it in like some dreams or early morning. I had that experience, but I don't know. I just didn't get traction in my.
You were young.
I was young, and I don't know what I thought.
Yeah.
I don't even know if I was afraid that it would be rejected or anything. It just didn't even fit at that point.
How weird. Yeah.
It was weird. Yeah. So, but I would have a second NDE. Well, I should say this. It changed me dramatically.
Okay.
From a trajectory of suburban middle class, upper middle class kid. Was that I went to Cal Berkeley for college. Most of my contemporaries are going out into the business world, and I just felt no compunction to do that. I actually had some internships and some, business things in San Francisco, but I made a big decision. I said, I want to work with the underprivileged of the world. I should say, I had an experience in Yugoslavia.
Peru, wasn't it? Peru?
Well, I got to Peru later, but in Yugoslavia, the summer between 1984, between junior and senior year at college, I was in Yugoslavia. I got behind the Iron Curtain, and that's a whole other story. But I woke up on an overnight bus ride in what is today Bosnia. And as I got up, I saw all these women with burqas on, Muslim women, of course, and their eyes, I'd just woken up from an overnight bus ride. I was groggy and just disoriented. And I looked out the windows, I pulled across the shades, and there are these women with beautiful, deep, intense, authentic, genuine eyes that were desperate. And they had their hands outstretched. They were asking for food and money. And I was just touched deeply by the raw honesty and desperation. I made a commitment right there, and it hit deeply with my own pain that I needed to be with these people because I didn't know. This is downloaded to me. They had something to teach me. It was a spiritual moment of awakening, like I have to be with these people. Now, what I didn't realize at the time, that I realize now subsequently, is I had suffered a spinal injury. My life was completely ripped apart. I could never walk. I could walk. Later, I had trouble walking, but I couldn't run at all. I lost all my athletic ability. And I had been a really good athlete.
Good athlete. Yeah, I read that.
Yeah. So I was struggling with intense pain in a largely, active male college student environment where I was just on the margins of my community in terms of how I was feeling. So I was depressed. I probably wouldn't say it wasn't clinically depressed, but I was suffering. And these women, for the first time, I felt some connection with somebody who knew about the pain that I was in. So I made a commitment, and later I was in Central and South America, as you alluded to later.
Yeah.
In those places, I worked with a lot of people that were underprivileged and suffering in a different way. And I learned a lot. But I had a second NDE, a second NDE after I got back from Peru.
Well, let's talk about that when we come back from commercial break, because I don't want to interrupt you. Hey, the book just came out, you guys. It's called At Heaven's Door. This is amazing. I'm going to tell you, I didn't have time to read all the stories, but I'm going to go back because he has so many stories in here of near-death experiences. And we're going to hope that he tells some of those today. I'm here today with William J. Peters. This is Nancy. You're out. This is High Road to Humanity, and we'll be right back. Hi, this is Nancy You're Out, and this is High Road to Humanity. And I'm here today with William Peters. He has a new book out called At Heaven's Door, and he's talking about his near-death experiences. You have had two. So tell us about the second one, please.
So the second one happened because I got a blood imbalance, idiopathic thrombocytopenia, which is essentially crashing platelets. So
how do you get that? I mean, that's
it's idiopathic. They don't know how I got it.
Crazy.
Yeah, it's crazy. So I'm in the ICU at Kaiser Oakland Hospital, and I'm passed out. I mean, I don't even know how I got to the ICU from the emergency room.
Okay.
But the next thing I know, in the middle of the night, I come to, and I am this awareness. I'm like myself, as I know myself, observing from the ceiling the life in the ICU, listening to nurses talk about, their social life. Keep in mind, this is like 2, 3, 4, 5 o'clock in the morning. And I don't have an identity. I don't think I'm even aware that I'm William. I am just an observing thing, consciousness, watching life in the ICU. Then the doctor comes in and he says, Mr. Peters, and he starts tapping on my hand. I don't feel his hand. I don't feel my hand being tapped on. I can see him from the top of his head. I can see, his crown, if you will. And I can see, and then I look at that guy he's talking, I see Mr. Peters, and I go, oh my God, that's me. Yeah. I had no idea it was that's me. He's tapping on me. And then I said, I wonder if I should answer him. If I answer him, what would happen? Can I answer him? All these profound questions. Can I even answer him?
Yeah.
And I said, if I did answer him, would he hear me from up here? So I just kind of ponder those questions. And then I do decide to answer him. And as I do, I fill back into my body energetically. I feel the aliveness in my body, and I hear my voice come out of my mouth, and then I open my eyes, and my view changes from seeing him in my body from above, from now just looking up to him in his face. And that was that experience of an out of body from my near-death experience. And he did tell me quite clearly, he said, Mr. Peters, you should know that most people would have died with the low amount of platelets that you had. I'm like,
You
well,
weren't
okay.
supposed to. You're supposed to write this book and tell these
Yeah.
stories.
Exactly.
Hey, one
So
of the
yeah.
well, I want to tell the audience really quick. One of the major things about this book is shared crossings, and what he's going to talk about. And I just want to bring up one story, and maybe you'll tell it to us, that I read in the book that will kind of maybe preface, where this is where this girl, Gail, was eating a grilled cheese sandwich with her grandfather. And can you tell that story to kind of explain what the shared crossing is?
So that's with Gail. That's the very first one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that
So
okay?
yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
So Gail is visiting her father in the hospital, and she doesn't, he's not doing well, but she doesn't know he's close to death. So she's there, and then all of a sudden her father starts exhibiting some sort of, they don't know what it was, but some sort of, I want to say it's a seizure of some type. The hospital staff ushers her out of the room and into the waiting room. She's in the waiting room. And while she's in the waiting room by herself, she says she has this vision. She feels like, she doesn't even call it a vision. She says, I find myself walking down this path, and I have a sense I'm walking with my father, although I don't really see him there. And so she's walking, and then all of a sudden, she kind of turns in to this, sees this gate and this gathering behind a gate. But what she really does, she hears people talking, and she hears the conversation. The conversation is saying, Walter's coming, Walter's coming, Walter's coming.
That's her dad.
Oh, that's her dad. And she's like, oh my, that's, and she goes, oh, and I hadn't heard him referred to in that way since I was a child. That's what all of his old family friends used to call him, who are all predeceased. And so she realizes, and they're saying, hurry up, let's get, Walter's coming. So she gets this sense, oh my gosh, they're welcoming him. They're preparing something for him because they're all excited and jubilant, and Walter's coming home. But she comes up to the gate on this place, and she realizes this is not for her. She can't go any further. And then the dream ends. And I don't call it a dream. We call this a shared death experience. She has somehow been given a glimpse into what awaits Walter, her father. And it's a welcoming party. That's one of the features we see in the shared death experience. And I should explain for your viewers and listeners that a shared death experience happens when somebody is dying and a caregiver, loved one, and in some cases, a bystander, reports that they've shared in the journey from this human life into an afterlife. And that afterlife is typically quite benevolent. It's a very good feeling place. So this is what happened to Gail. Here she is. Somehow she is sharing in some way this journey that Walter's on. It's really important, this walk along that path, because there's always movement in a shared death experience.
Well, should I tell you what happened? Because I don't know, there wasn't really movement. When my dad died, I was sitting on the couch and I was in another state. And he was dying, and I didn't realize, but I knew he was bad. And I guess I did, because I said goodbye to him like on FaceTime. Then I sat down and I looked up, and he was there, and he was young, and he was happy, and he waved at me. And I was so excited that I got to see him. And I felt like privileged that I got to see him, but like people didn't believe me.
Yeah. So
I want to say this so that people understand. It's like, you're so excited and you're like, oh my God, he made it. This is so cool. But then people are like, yeah, right.
So that experience that you just shared there, Nancy, is something we see in the shared death experience. And that is that your father has died and he appears to you, you're remote. So let's be clear, shared death experiences can happen at bedside or they can happen remotely. About
Right.
2/3 of our experiences happen remotely. So yours makes perfect sense. He appears to you, and typically the fact that he looks younger
Oh,
is
yeah.
also what we see.
Oh, yeah.
So spirits can be vain. It's fine.
I love
But we
it.
see it's a characteristic. And my sense is his waving to you. What did you interpret the waving as?
He went like this, like, good to go. It wasn't like this. It was like,
Yeah.
you know what I
So-
mean?
Yeah. So just so you know, you said earlier, and I understand this, that, well, I didn't see him on a journey, but actually you are seeing him on a journey. He is telling you, I'm here, but I'm ready to go. I'm about ready to take off. And then did you see him depart? How'd that leave? How did he leave?
He did this and then that was it.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's not a big representation of journey, but my sense is, if we were to work with this a little bit more deeply, he showed up to say kind of this, thank you, I love you, goodbye.
Oh God, and it meant the world to me.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. So there it is. And so it's a gift. He was giving you a gift to let you know that, he knows you're going to be concerned about him. And he knows that you want to know that he's okay and well. And he gave you that. And then that salute, I'm off, So that's a shared death experience. So thank you for sharing it. Beautiful. Yeah. And it's a common type we have. The only difference is sometimes people report that I felt the spirit of the deceased come in and then depart. And then depart.
No, you're right. He was. No, I didn't say that part. He was
Yeah.
in the living room. Like I knew he was there.
Okay.
Like, you know what I mean? Before I
Yes.
saw him, I knew he was in my living. It was weird, but I
Yeah.
didn't say anything. I'm so psychic anyway, but I knew he was there. And I kind of was like, he was like watching me, like what I was doing. And then I looked up and then you're right. That's
Yeah.
exactly what happened. So this
Yeah,
is what you find with everybody, huh? Or most people.
Well, there are different types of shared death experiences. So I can, for listeners, it's important to know that the shared death experience has three major kind of three motifs, if you will, or unifying characteristics.
All right.
One is the journey motif,
Right.
always showing some sort of journey from here to what lies beyond.
Mm-hmm.
Second one is relationship. The relationship is central to this. That's not to say there aren't some people, especially, someone like yourself or others, I'm quite adept. If I'm at a bedside, if it's a family I'm working with, I'll often have some sort of shared death experience just because I'm so grooved to the dimension. I can attune to it very well. So I get privy access to it. But generally it requires a deep, soulful, heartfelt connection to the dying. And the third element we see, it's the unifying kind of helpful connection to it is, it's just like a near-death experience. It's very similar features to the near-death experience. There are some major differences because there are different vantage points, if you will. In a near-death experience, someone's dying, they're having a brush with death themselves. In the shared death experience, they are observing someone who is actually dying. So the number one characteristic in a shared death experience is that they will see the dying in some form.
Yeah, that's true. Because I've never been able to see again. That's the only time I've ever seen like that. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
And I'm super psychic, super, claircognizant, but that was the only time. Like God is totally in charge, you guys. If he wants you to see, you get to see. If he doesn't, you don't get to. I mean, that's pretty much how it is, isn't it?
Well, you're right. I mean, it's hard for us to understand why 51% of our shared death experience cases see the dying. Not all of them, but just over the majority. And then the other thing that happens is you see elevated beings and spirits.
Let's talk about that next when we come back from commercial break. I'm so glad you're here today. William Peters is here. His book is called At Heaven's Door, and it just came out, you guys. And I know we can pick this up at Amazon. Do you have a website?
You can pick it up anywhere books are sold because it's sold by Simon & Schuster.
Love it. Okay. This is Nancy Yearout. This is High Road to Humanity, and we'll be right back. Hi, this is Nancy Yearout, and this is High Road to Humanity. I'm here today with William Peters. He has a new book out at Heaven's Door. If you're watching me on YouTube right now, I'm holding the book up. Hey, he's going to talk to us some more about the other side, but I ask if you talk a little bit about the angels, the angelic realm.
Yeah, so one of the features of the shared death experience is these elevated beings that are seen by the shared death experiencer. So sometimes they call them angels. I mean, in my book, I refer to that chapter as angels because that's a common identification for this type of presence.
Right.
Sometimes they call them beings of light when they describe them. Sometimes they do actually appear to have wings. It's kind of interesting. And sometimes they just say, I felt an elevated presence, or it had a form of a human being in a certain way, but it was, they say it had the shape and form of a human being, but it was so much more powerful and loving and, just kind of extreme in those virtuous ways. So they appear in a great deal of our cases. And there is one particular manifestation that I'm most intrigued with, and that is what I've identified as the conductor. It's this force that seems to be managing the transition of the human spirit soul, or I should say it differently, the soul spirit which resides in the human being, to transition to the afterlife, or what comes next. And this conductor is seen sometimes in angelic form. There's one case I'll share it with you right now. This is towards the end of the book. This is Amelia. And Amelia had a very challenging situation. Her 10-year-old son was diagnosed with cancer. And after 3 years of, trying to seek the best treatment and, keep him here, at the moment of his death, Amelia describes a beautiful lady appearing, and like angelic, filled with light. She goes, she is so beautiful. She even says, I have to remember this. I've never seen anything so beautiful. So this angelic being is there, and she's urgent. She says she's urgent. She's come to do something. And just at that moment, her son dies. And Amelia says, oh, she gets it. This beautiful woman has come to take her child. And she came with a mission, and one that she was intentionally, carrying out within this time-space continuum. And so she takes her son. And at the same time, Charmin, Amelia's sister, the aunt of Tom, very close to Tom, walks into the room, and she says, I saw Tom rising out of his body. I saw him sit up in his bed, and then he went upwards and was gone. So these two events, two experiences by family members, the mother and the aunt of Tom, at the exact same moment, corroborate that Tom is dying and he's being received and guided by this being of light. Call her an angel if you'd like. I think Amelia would have no problem with that. Yeah. But also in my nomenclature, I call this the conductor. This lovely lady, this being, has come down to facilitate Tom's transition and guide it. And we see this in various ways in our research of now over 225 cases. We see.
Yeah. Well, and you say you studied more than 800 separate SDE cases, shared death experience cases. I just want to ask you, I'm just curious. I know this, but I just want you to confirm it. There's always an entity that comes to help that person.
We don't see that borne out all the time in the research.
Okay, talk to me about that. Yeah, I'm curious.
Yeah, so what we see is, so what the shared death experiencer sees or observes or senses is that the dying is moving towards a destination. Oftentimes they'll see a light in the distance that they're moving towards. Oftentimes they'll see deceased relatives and friends who are there to assist, comfort, guide. I've mentioned the angels that appear in different ways, in different forms. They're all there to assist. The atmosphere that this is taking place in is glorious. It's heavenly. It's hyper alive. It's more real than real. And when the experiencers are in that space, what they describe is, I knew I had answers to everything. I understood the secrets of the universe. Any question I had was answered in my mind. And I felt so connected to everybody, everything. And I was so at peace. And so that's the shared death experience. Those are the dominant features.
Now, what pushed you to continue and put all these stories together and put the book together? I mean, why did you do this? Was this your mission? Is this what God wanted you to do?
It certainly feels that way. This, I believe, is my last job. So I was very interested in, after these 2 near-death experiences, I should say, I tried to push this stuff away. I just did not. I mean, I was training as a psychotherapist. And in psychotherapy, it's more of a medical model. I was transpersonal. That means I was kind of merging spirituality with the psychology, if you will. But I didn't want to go so much into near-death experiences. At the time, I didn't even know about shared-death experiences. I really didn't. But I worked at Zen Hospice as a volunteer in San Francisco, a very progressive, cutting-edge, Buddhist-oriented hospice.
Oh, neat.
I was on a 24-bed open ward at the San Francisco Public Hospital, a lot of indigent people. I was around a lot of death. And on one occasion, I was reading to Ron a story. He loved being read stories. Now, in this case, he was very close to death. He was unresponsive. And as I'm reading to him, I pop out of my body and I am suspended above my body. And Ron's body in his bed, laying prone, asleep, largely looking that way. But I look to my right and there's Ron.
Yeah.
And Ron's got these big, lovely eyes and a smile as, big as the world. And he's telling me, check this out, William. This is where I've been. This is where, and I'm like, whoa. Now, having had my previous experiences, near-death experiences, I was very comfortable here.
Right.
But I was a bit shocked that it happened and that Ron was there too. So I don't have spontaneous out-of-body experiences, not at that time. And even now I don't have them. But so it seemed to me that Ron had invited me into this space.
Oh, okay.
And it was quite moving.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I talked to my supervisor there, who I loved. He'd been a veteran of hospice. And he said, oh, William, phenomena rolling by, let it go. Very Buddhist response. But I would have more of these experiences on this hospice ward. And I didn't talk about them like so many of us, like so many of your listeners who probably said, oh my gosh, I had one of these things, but I never knew it was a shared death experience. So with that, I still didn't talk about it until I met Raymond Moody, the founder of, the near-death experience. I met him at a talk in 2009. And he was talking about the shared death experience. Why? Because he would get letters from people saying, hey, Raymond, I didn't have a near-death experience, but I had a very similar experience at the death of my mother. And then Raymond would collect these letters over the years. And then he wrote up Glimpses of Eternity to say, hey, everybody, there's another experience called the shared death experience, very similar to the near-death experience, but it's experienced by caregivers, loved ones who are at the death of someone they're close to.
I'm really glad you wrote the book. I mean, more and more, and that's one of the reasons I do this show, just so you know, is because I want people to realize that we're here for a while and we experience, and then we go to another dimension, and not to be afraid.
Yeah.
That's the biggest thing. I just don't want people to be afraid.
You're hitting on something really important, and that is that when we look at our research, and I'm this way as well, as I'm a multi-experiencer here, is that our experiencers report that they know their loved ones are alive and well in a benevolent afterlife. They know that they'll see them again. Their fear of death is completely alleviated. Their grief is completely different, as I'm sure I want to talk to you about. I bet your grief was completely different with your father, because yes, you miss him. Yes, you adore him. That doesn't change. but he's in a
Oh
good place.
yeah, he's so much better off. His
Yeah.
legs had given out and he was standing. It was huge. It was gigantic. Yeah, because I was like, everyone was like crying and I was like, all right, Daddy made it, And they're just looking at me like, oh my God. But see, I know that because I got to see him and God knew. Isn't that's the blessing about this whole thing? It's such a blessing to me.
A
I think.
huge blessing. You're absolutely. That's why, I refer to them as gifts,
Yeah.
and this is why we need to welcome these gifts into our culture. That's why I wrote the book. I wrote the book to normalize these experiences because, unknowing healthcare providers might call this a grief hallucination or delusion or something. And it's not.
They try to rationalize it.
That's right. Well, they can't explain how it happens, so they can only have a pathology for it,
Yeah, I hear you. All right, we got one more segment. We're going to talk a little bit more with William Peters. His book is called At Heaven's Door. This is Nancy. You're out. This is High Road to Humanity, and we'll be right back. You're out, and this is High Road to Humanity, and I'm here today with William J. Peters, and we're talking about heaven. And I asked him if he would talk to us a little bit about when somebody has a tragic accident and a shared death experience when it's a trauma. So, if you wouldn't mind, talk to us about that.
Yeah. So, if you remember in the book, I talk about Sarah M. So Sarah M wakes up in the morning, just any other morning, and all of a sudden she feels nauseous, sweaty, high fever. She starts vomiting, and her husband and her kids go, "Mom, this is what's going on. This never happens to you. We're going to take you to the hospital. Seems serious." She goes, yeah, let's go. She's getting ready to go. And then she starts feeling a little better. She goes, well, hold on. I feel like I might be getting a little better. And then she goes, you know what? I think I'm getting better. I don't know what that was, but all right. So about an hour later, she receives a call from her sister. She goes, Sarah, very bad news to share with you. Leela, your niece, died of an accidental drug overdose this morning. And so Sarah puts two and two together and says, wait a minute, an hour ago, I was feeling this. I had what is a drug overdose? What are those symptoms? And she realizes, I think I was feeling what Leela was feeling. And so at first you hear these, as a researcher. By the way, when Sarah, she's lives in town here, and she's talking about, she shared it with me kind of sheepishly, am I making this up? What the heck? And I said, we actually have a few other cases about this. We have other drug overdose cases, unfortunately, very similar responses. We also have cases of a cardiac situation where somebody will report, the experiencers report, I had trouble breathing and I felt I was having a heart attack myself. And I, part of my body kind of seized up. And then they find out at the moment of death, they find out that a close relative or friend died of a heart attack about the same time.
No, I want to ask you.
Sympathetic. Yeah.
Well, yeah, let me stop you a second. I'm an empath, and I there's a lot of empaths I work with, and that's the empathy. So are these people who are picking up this energy, because that's how it works, are they picking up because they're empaths? They're picking up the empathy of that person, the energy of that person, because they're connected. Is that what you have found? I'm just curious.
Well, we're not we haven't been able to find a character type, a personality type for the SDE experiencer. What we found is that they tend to be more open-minded, receptive. They might have prayer and meditation practices. They might have some empathic ability that they're not aware of or identified. But there's no question from our research, since we now have a dozen of these cases, that they're picking up on the symptoms, and we've checked the quality of their experience with the quality of the symptom experience of the dying, and they match up.
Yeah.
So there is some sort of, empathic connection, as you can say. That's why we call it a sympathetic response.
Yeah.
They're sympathizing with the dying. But let me share another experience that I think is just fascinating. And that is, and this is also in the book. So Mark is finishing his work in New Jersey, and he's driving back after a week of doing some intense work, guiding people in the wilderness. And he's in the passenger seat, and all of a sudden it just kind of nods off, and he finds himself with his father in another dimension, so to speak, just not in the earth plane.
Okay.
And he's there, and he realizes his father is confused. And he goes, Dad. And he goes, yes, Mark. He goes, what's going on? He goes, I think you've died. He goes, I've died. He goes, like, well, he goes, yeah. He goes, well, what do I do? And he says, well, why don't you turn this way and let's go this way. Let's go this way. Mark kind of knows what to do. Now, a lot of these people that report this type of experience, which we call a guided SDE, it's the experiencers called in to help assist, orient the dying in their transition, in their journey. Mark orients him, and then all of a sudden, Mark's grandmother, his father's mother, shows up, and they were very close. They embrace, and it's just this beautiful, jovial, euphoric reconnection. And then Mark's uncle is there, his father's brother, and they all embrace. Okay. And then there's a beautiful blazing light behind the mother, that the mother comes out of the light, the uncle comes out of the light, and that's where they greet. And then they turn and they start heading to the light, and Mark realizes that he's at a boundary that he cannot pass. He cannot go into that light. And so he returns to his body. And then a couple hours later, he gets a phone call from his brother, says, Dad died. And Mark goes, of course, I know. So these are profound experiences.
Yeah. There was another one that I read. The son was going to get married, and he got hit by a car. Oh my
God, this is
Will you
Dawn.
tell this? I hate to, but yeah, tell that story.
So Dawn is the mother of Sean, and Sean is about to get married. I think he's getting married in a few days. Dawn is at home doing wedding preparations, and all of a sudden, no, I should say Sean is her son, mid-20s, who's getting married, and Sean is out with his guy friends, bachelor type stuff. And at some point, Dawn just has this realization that grabs her attention, and she says, Sean just died. Sean just died. Sean just died. And her husband's like, calm down. They get a phone call. Oh, by the way, she'll say she felt herself pulled up in her body, an ascension, a magnetic pull on her solar plexus heart area.
Okay.
And then her husband's trying to calm her down. They get a phone call, says, from the hospital. And by the way, she's an ER nurse, so she knows the person who calls, and says, Sean's coming to us in an ambulance. You better get here soon. She gets there, and the doctor says, we can't keep him alive. He sustained too big of head injuries. And so he dies. But here's what we call a remote. By the way, Mark's case was a remote too. And all of the cases we've discussed have been remotes, which that makes sense, because they're 2/3 of our cases are remote.
Right.
But Dawn has this remote shared death experience. And she says, one of her famous quotes that's actually in some of our promotional materials are, I will stand on the top of a building and proclaim to the world that I am an average American earning average money, living an average life, but I shared in my son's transition from this life to an afterlife. That's what she says.
And those are the stories that people need to hear.
Yes.
They really
are.
So
healing. I mean, it's hard when we lose somebody. I'm a grief and bereavement counselor. I mean, I can never take away the pain, nor would I want to take away their pain in any way that would not be authentic. We need to grieve and feel our pain, but these experiences help us see the bigger picture.
Yeah, I was just going to say that to you. Do you see, because that's my hope and that's my goal, is to have people realize and to connect with the divine and not be afraid. And do you see people coming more to that
Yeah.
realization? You
Oh,
do.
yes.
You
Oh,
do.
yes. That if there's any teaching in this, it's that we go on, we survive life. We survive human death. Life
Yeah.
continues.
Yeah.
Life you can't take away. Life is the substrate, and then you survive human death. You go to benevolent afterlife. People
Yeah.
often ask, are there distressing, SDs that people see hell realms? Never seen any of that. The most distressing is the sympathetic, where they have some of the symptoms of the dying, the vomiting or the tight chest. But that's also very, rare in our study. Maybe 5%, 1 in 20, somewhere in that range.
Yeah.
So most people just experience the glory of it all.
Isn't that
And
great?
like the near-death experience, these benevolent heavenly realms.
I love it. I love it. That's fantastic. I'm really glad you came on the show today. Anything you want to leave us with before we get out of here?
What I would leave you with is, if your listeners talk about these experiences, bring them to your close friends and family, and you'll find that they're more common than you know. And come to our website. If you have a case, an experience, go to our website, go to our contact page, share if you're willing, share a bit of your story or as much as you want. And my research team will reach out to you because we're still collecting research. And we have a story library. You can listen to videos there of people having these experiences, and they're easy to access. And, if you want to follow us in our research, come, get on our newsletter, do all sorts of things.
What's the website?
Sharedcrossing.com. Sharedcrossing.com.
Okay.
And stay tuned. We have other, I do other teachings. I'll be doing one with Raymond Moody, and I'll be teaching a group in the next coming weeks. So there's lots of ways to learn more and get the best end of life experience, because that's what we're trying to do, help people have the best end of life experience they can have. And we have courses that teach that.
I love it. I love it. Fantastic. So glad you came on the show today. You guys, the book is called At Heaven's Door. This is Nancy Yearout. This is High Road to Humanity. If you guys want to get in touch, I'm not promoting myself again today. Here we are, though. If you want an angel reading or a psychic reading, go to my website, nancyyearout.com. You're also going to find me on TikTok, pulling up angel cards for you guys every day, and that's under High Road to Humanity. So make sure you check that out. This is Nancy Yearout. This is High Road to Humanity, and we'll see you next time. Everybody take care, and God bless.
Connect the dots and keep the motion. Can achieve your goal. Let's hit the high road.
Hey, you guys, join me next week on The High Road for more stories filled with wisdom, love, and hope for our future. Have a fabulous week, and know that by staying on the high road, you will make it to your destination. Visit my website, nancyyearout.com, where you can book a private session to learn how to tap into your own abilities. And check out my YouTube channel. It's Nancy Yearout's High Road to Humanity.
You can achieve your goal.